TV Spotlight. Millennium. Millennium was the name of an American horror thriller series that ran for 3 seasons from 1996 to 1999. The series starred veteran character actor Lance Henriksen as Frank Black. Henriksen has been in many movies and television, including the likes of Aliens and The Terminator and Hard Target. The series also starred Megan Gallagher as his wife Catherine and Brittany Tiplady as his daughter Jordan. The series was created by Chris Carter, who had previously created the massively successful The X-Files. Frank Black was a former FBI profiler whose ability to get inside the minds of criminals borders on the actually psychic. That work took its toll, however, and he retired from the FBI, though he's now working as a consultant for an organization known as the Millennium Group. The series was created as essentially a relatively straight kind of serial killer thriller series, though soon began to move into more supernatural and outlandish territory. Despite being massively hyped, Millennium was never a massive hit, and it was cancelled after 3 seasons. The first season followed that initial kind of premise and was generally a straight kind of thriller series, although some supernatural elements and indications of a wider arc began to emerge towards the end of the season. For season 2, things changed quite radically. Chris Carter was no longer showrunner, and instead in came Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who had actually been part of the X-Files and were among the high-profile writers in the first couple of series of that show. They took the series into a much more deeper kind of direction, focusing much more on the supernatural elements and on the deeper elements of the Millennium Group and exactly who they are and what they want, and the answers to that might not be particularly pleasant. For the 3rd season, however, Morgan and Wong were replaced again with Chris Carter coming back, and a kind of mashing of the two kind of versions of the show took place for season 3, with a new addition to the cast in the form of Clea Scott as a new FBI agent called Emma. That season also saw Megan Gallagher leaving the series, her character having been killed effectively off screen during the apocalyptic events of the season 2 finale. This kind of chopping and changing of direction probably didn't help the series either, and it was ultimately cancelled after 3 seasons. Now, I remember Millennium. I actually have Millennium on DVD, at least the first 2 seasons. I can't remember whether I've got season 3. It's been a very long time since I've seen it. It was massively hyped when it started, of course, because it was Chris Carter, and the X-Files was at its absolute height of popularity. I think, like most people, I was kind of disappointed by a lot of the first season, as it just seemed kind of run-of-the-mill sort of serial killer of the week. Lance Henriksen was a great lead, but you know, it was rather an odd way of doing it because there wasn't really an ensemble cast. You had Megan. The only other kind of major regular was Megan Gallagher as his wife, who didn't really have that much to do because she was just his wife. She wasn't really involved in any of the stuff. And while there were recurring characters such as Bill Smitrovich as his friend and police officer, and Terry O'Quinn, later massively famous as John Locke in The X-Files, of course, as one of the Millennium Group, the lack of a kind of a supporting cast was again probably one of the things that didn't help the show. Things started to get a little bit more interesting towards the end of that first season. There's this big 2-parter in which one of the recurring characters is murdered, and there's definitely some kind of demonic kind of presence and thing going on. And I'm like, oh, okay. I have to say, I really, really liked season 2 under Morgan and Wong. I thought that season was really interesting. They really pushed more towards the supernatural stuff, and really tried to give the show what it had been very much lacking in the first season, in the sense of a backstory, an arc, and what it's all about. And they made the Millennium group considerably more interesting, and possibly not the good guys we thought they were in season 1, with events reaching an ending in the two-part finale, which is basically almost like the end of the world with a killer virus. Of course, they then kind of scale that back rather at the beginning of season 3 and say it wasn't that bad, which again was kind of another disappointment. It's a strange show, Millennium. It's certainly not a bad show, and there are many, many good episodes. Again, season 2 in particular, I really, really liked. But again, I think that chopping and changing of what it was about and where it was going really did not do the show any favors. Now, I don't know exactly what the ratings were for each particular season. It was, it started off strong and then kind of tapered off. I don't know whether 2 was higher than 1 or 3 or whatever, but it does seem to me that kind of chopping and changing is not really the best way to run a TV show, because if you had people like me who would get very much started to get into it during the second season, and then they just kind of veered away in a completely different direction for season 3, that's not really the way to get people to invest and care. So yeah, Millennium was a bit of a failure in a way, an interesting failure with some highlights and a very strong lead in Lance Henriksen. But I don't know, it never seemed to quite fulfill its potential, both in terms of the ratings, but and perhaps more importantly in terms of the material that it was delivering. But it was an interesting show, and if you do get the chance to watch it, yeah, watch it. Season 2 in particular was really strong.